An enemy arises and takes me by surprise, trying to choke my hopes and dreams. But then I lift my voice and scream, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. How can this be? I can't breathe. My liberty, let me breathe. I am a life that matters. I can't breathe. Let me breathe. Hear me. I would like to live my life just the same as you. No more looking over my shoulder in fear of what to my wife, my children, 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 my family, my friends. As long as I breathe and I keep believing that I will see this end. Until then, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. How can this be? I can't breathe. You can't take my liberty. Let me breathe. I am a life that matters. I can't breathe. Let me breathe. Hear me. System repeats itself. That is a travesty. Those who can remember the past are condemned to. So in cunning disguise, we never detect the resemblance we see. This is a modern day religion. Now with the news, but with the need, I can't leave. I just want to be free. I can't breathe. Free to be me. Let me breathe. Free at last tonight.
Hello, everyone that's joining us today. Please just like us and share. We're going to have a really good part 3 of a 3-part series. When He Can't Breathe, I Can't Either. I hope that song that I played really resonated with you so that we can really get inside some of the issues that are what's going on in our country. Again, we're here with 5 of us, 5 powerful women that have had the courage to use this platform to talk about things that are affecting the African American community when it comes to our women and the oppression that's going on with our African American men and how the trauma affects all of us. Since we started this series over the last 3 weeks, there have been many things that have taken part in our country when it comes to the brutal killing of George Floyd and many others that have come up since then that have been passed away. I think we heard about somebody yesterday, a young man who was jogging and he had a mask on and they did a chokehold on him. And so all of these things are being visible to us on television, social media. And so this conversation really needs to be had. And so my name is Phyllis Everett. I'm from Saffron Trust Womens Foundation, an organization that looks to reduce socioeconomic disparities so we can make a difference in the health outcomes in Texas. And with that being said, this is the reason why we advocate. This is the reason why we have platforms like this, because these things are affecting health outcomes. And without further ado, as normal, I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly Holliday. She'll be introducing our speakers for today and give you information on what we're going to be covering. And so, Kimberly, please go right ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Phyllis Everett. First of all, I want to thank you for choosing that particular song. As most of you know, I am Lady Joy, and music is my medicine and it is my therapy. And as much as you see me either behind a microphone or on the video, my heart actually still jumps out of my chest and I still get nervous. So I thank you for the music, which actually allowed me an opportunity just to simply breathe. So thank you for that. So, good evening and welcome to Table Talk. When he can't breathe, I can't either. My name is Kimberly Holiday, and I am the founder of Fly Incorporated, which stands for First Love Yourself. And that is simply so important in this time. I will be serving as your host this evening. And again, I will skip the fancy introduction of who I am to simply leave time for the conversation that we're going to have this evening. I am a social psychologist. I am a published book author, a radio personality, and a motivational speaker. Tonight, once again, we are coming to the table, the virtual table, that is, to engage in a courageous conversation. As Miss Phyllis stated, this is show number 3 of a 3-part series. And the objective of the series is to bring an unfiltered awareness of the psychological impact Black women face as it relates to racial related trauma. And I can tell you, since we've been having this conversation, I can tell you that it's real. And this has really opened up some stuff for me. And so I'm just going to leave that at that. And I went to go get my tissues just in case my face leaks. Um, we have joined together, all of us, not just the 5 of us you see on the screen, but all of us, the world, right? We have joined together in solidarity to say that enough is enough. When he can't breathe, I can't either. He is our fathers, our husbands, our sons, our nephews, brothers, uncles, friends, and our neighbors. You see, this is a movement, and we thank you for joining together with us to support our Black men and our young boys. I've been emotional all week, so I don't want to waste any more time to introduce our guests. But before I do, they're not our guests, they're actually my friends. Let me say that. But before I do, I want to let you know that this is an interactive experience. And so, again, as always, we welcome your comments and your questions. And especially tonight, since this is the last time that we'll be here for now. We'll be back. Let me just put that in. We'll do our very best to answer your comments and your questions in real time. So as Ms. Phyllis said, go ahead, like us, love us, and share us. And for those of you who are bold enough and courageous enough, go ahead and share this as a watch party. I have been really blessed for the last 3 Saturdays to be able to sit at the table with these amazing ladies. Facilitating our conversation again will be the lovely Miss Phyllis Everett. She is the founder of the nonprofit organization Saffron Trust Womens Foundation. She is a pioneer for disrupting the status quo and making an impact on critical social, economic, and health issues affecting minority women within the most marginalized communities. I wrote this down. I love her because she sees the very, very best in me. And she's serious about helping women be the very best versions of themselves. Miss Phyllis, I love you. Angela Pye. I just met her, but I love her too. She's an activist. That's not on my notes, but she is serious about what she believes in, right? Angela Pye is a wife. She is the amazing mother of 4 brilliant young Black men. She is the published author of A Black Mother Dying, and we'll talk more about that. Angela Pye has over 20 years of experience in child welfare. Angela holds a master's in business administration and a master's in psychology. She loves sports, and it is my understanding that she does a lot of coaching, and I think she actually likes to play herself as well. In addition to coaching her son's athletic teams, she proudly serves on the board of directors for Black Mamas ATX, and she is actually very active on the school board in Leander, and we'll learn more about that. Welcome, Angela. Charlotte Moore is back with us again today. And Charlotte Moore is a writer at CNN International in Atlanta, Georgia. She is the founder of More Media. She is the executive director of the Black Bodies Project and the author of Benevolence in Black, which is a portrait book celebrating remarkable Black people in Austin. Woo, 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 woo. And we'll talk more about that as well. And I would like to welcome Charlotte to come on back home as soon as possible. I want to let you know that this book actually aims the reader to consider actually noticing and acknowledging your Black neighbors who each and every day are making a real difference in the lives of people in their communities. Welcome, Charlotte. Rounding out our panel tonight, we have an activist for social justice, Miss Joyce James. Miss Joyce James is from Port Arthur and now calls Central Texas her home. Beginning her professional career as a CPS caseworker, she rose to the Assistant Commissioner of Texas CPS and was soon promoted to lead the Center for Elimination of, I've been working on this word for 3 weeks, of disproportionality and disparities at the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. Today, she is the CEO of Central Texas-based Joyce James Consulting. And last week, she gave us a heartfelt conversation on the groundwater analysis. I have not actually had the opportunity to put my arms around her, to hug her, but I feel like I already know her and I would like to have her adopt me. Welcome again, Miss Joyce James. I love you. So at this time, I would like to thank you all for loving on me. And when we are not on the screen, we've had some time together. And so I thank you for just loving me and accepting me just as I am. Miss Phyllis, I turn it back over to you.
Wow, that was amazing, Kimberly. You always do such a great introduction. I just love when you talk and you just lay it out so simply. So this week we are going to address some of the questions that we had in part 1 and part 2 series. So as you see me with my head down, I'm going through a lot of the questions that we had from last week, and we're going to be addressing those with Charlotte, Angela, and Joyce today. So this should be a really good conversation. Because we had a lot of questions last week. I'm going to start this question off and we'll see which one of the ladies would like to tackle with this. I'm thinking it may be Joyce, but it also might be Charlotte. They all have, expertise in this area, and Angela as well. So let me pose a question. It's a large paragraph, so I do apologize if my head is down and not on the screen. But we had one participant ask last week, could we build a better engagement of our agenda if we focused on human equity and equality for all? I ask this because I think that white people seriously have an issue with the term. If we recognize that racism are social, economically, educational, and even political constructs that meet the needs of a group of people while oppressing other groups, namely people of color. So this particular person that was on the feed wants to know, she believes that if we recognize racism with all those constructs, we might lose it. So that's why we pull out and talk about specifically the racial situation when it comes to brown and Black individuals. Would any of you like to take on that question? Can we build a better engagement?
Just to be clear, the beginning of that was about human equity and equality?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Joyce, it was. They want to know if we can build a better engagement of our agenda, I guess, with Black women, if we focused on human equity and equality for all, as opposed to just African American.
Absolutely. And, I specifically do work around addressing institutional and structural racism in the United States. And the group that has been most oppressed as it relates to racism in the United States has been African Americans, but certainly not to negate the disparate treatment and disparate outcomes that other populations experience in their relationship with systems and institutions. And the importance of understanding that is often driven by data. So one of the, a fact is that Black people have the worst outcomes in their relationships with all systems and institutions. It doesn't mean that other populations don't fall in line behind them in terms of issues as it relates to, women, gender, other isms, Black and brown people who experience very similar outcomes. And so when we think about it in terms of equity and equality, I'm really pleased that they use those two terms, because in my workshop, I spent a lot of time talking about how we have been driven to assume that since the passing of the civil rights laws, that now we're all equal. And we have been really given a narrative that says that if we just treat everybody the same, then everyone should have good outcomes. And so we know that that's not true. And so what we're really striving for is equity. And in equity comes the fact that race is the #1 predictor of a person's outcomes in this country as it relates to our relationships with systems and institutions. And so, yes, we should all be about addressing the issues of other populations. And I'm going to quickly bring this to a close, but to say that whenever there's been a movement, and of course, much more so recently, to address issues that specifically impact African Americans and Blacks, there's been lifted up the concern that we're not addressing the issues of other people.
Yes.
And what I have found is that when we stop focusing specifically on African Americans, that somehow our issues get lost. And so I have been deliberate and intentional about lifting these issues as it relates to Black people, but at the same time, not ignoring nor negating the fact that Hispanic, Latino, Native Americans, other marginalized populations experience disparate treatment by systems and institutions.
And I want to add to that, because I completely agree with what Joyce said, but when I hear the initial part of the question, what I'm hearing is equity and equality for all, to make other people feel like we're including them, specifically white people.
Yes.
And that would be easier for us to get to the outcome that we want. And we hone on the fact that we hear this all lives matter, and no one has ever said Black lives matter, because right now, Black lives are the ones that are in danger. And so I put a post on my Facebook earlier today, and it really hit home when you think about what happened in Vegas. We said Vegas strong. What happened in Boston? We said Boston strong. Nobody said all other cities. But we focus on it, and there's something wrong when you hear that word Black, that it makes people like, oh, well, wait a second, let's back up. And I think we need to be very clear that right now, the way that we're treated in systems, we're not all equal. And we're probably not ever going to all be equal, but we can be treated equitably based off of what our needs are. And so I think that there needs to be that focus on that. So that would just be what I'd add on to it.
Oh, that's really good, Angela. I really like that. Joyce and Angela really summed that up.
Can I answer that too? Can I comment on that?
Yes, I was going to say, please.
Yes, thank you, because that's come up with, I too want to say I'm so grateful that I've been able to participate in this. And Kimberly she doesn't talk about herself the way she should. And you're amazing Lady Joy is the perfect moniker for you, because you are full of joy. But in doing, screening my film, Black Bodies, that question has come up. And I would be really confronted initially when someone would raise their hand and say, well, why are you just talking about Black people? And initially, like I said, I would become apologetic and I would say, well, we are all humans, and I try to come up with some reason for it. But I've gotten much stronger. And
so they
like
don't feel uncomfortable, right? We feel like we don't want anybody else to be uncomfortable, but we have to be uncomfortable.
Well, that's right. That's right. We take that on because it's an issue. And then again, when I started listening to Joyce and I started doing my own research, and it is true. What really bothers me is that there are a lot of white people who either don't believe the research or they're not doing the research, but it's there. And in the data, it tells you who has the worst outcomes. So yes, to echo what Angela just said, there is a serious problem, a serious issue within the Black community that needs attention. And so, yeah, I'm not apologetic about it anymore. I mean, my project is called the Black Bodies Project because we need some attention. And it's unfortunate that the attention comes after people get killed, after mothers lose their babies, after, all these things that have been going on for generations. So yeah, I acknowledge that we're all human and that, I acknowledge that we're all equal, but a lot of you don't. So that's where I come from with it.
Oh, thank you for that, Charlotte, Kimberly, and Joyce. And I think it gives 3 different perspectives for that particular question that was asked. And I hope that the viewer who asked that, I hope they're comfortable with that answer. And I really liked it. The next question I have that was online last week was, how did the systems get so polluted? And I think I'll start with Joyce on that one.
I would say that it's not that the systems have gotten polluted. They were designed to be exactly how they are.
Drop the mic.
We didn't create the system.
Right. And so when we think about, and often in my workshop, when I have in the workshop a whole topic called the design of systems. And the first piece of that is that the systems and institutions are decades old. And, every time the people who are in the room with me for the workshop, I say, we didn't have anything to do with how they were set up, right? But they were designed a long time ago. We didn't build the house, but we live in it today. And so to be accountable, we have to become knowledgeable about the history of our systems and institutions. And I've said it previously on this show. Our systems and institutions were designed by whites, for whites, to the exclusion of all other peoples until about 56 years ago. And so there is the assumption that they became polluted, but they were designed in a way that they were to the benefit of only one group of people. And so there was no space, no access, no opportunity for anyone else to have access to those benefits and privileges. And then there's the false assumption that when the civil rights laws passed in 1964, that suddenly the systems were no longer the way they were set up to be, and that we were all equal. See, that's also the equal equity versus equality piece. But I say it over and over that racism and racist practice in the culture of our systems and institutions did not end with the stroke of a pen in 1964. And so if they are to no longer be polluted, they must be transformed, not reformed. They must be transformed from the inside out. That systems must now be willing to turn the mirror inward, to become critical lovers of the systems and institutions, and to do the deeper analysis to uncover and to own and acknowledge that the racist policies and practices that were inherently built into the systems, that is still there. And that's why they're polluted. And they continue to be polluted because systems are very resistant to change. And so that's why it's so hard to undo racism. You know, you'll make a little bit of, we keep going a few steps forward and a few steps backwards because we really have not held ourselves accountable for understanding the deep rooted issues of racism in our systems. Instead, we have looked outside of the system and asked what's wrong with the people. And we haven't been willing to hold systems and institutions accountable for what they have done to, what they are still doing, and the history of what has happened to the people who have been excluded from the systems.
It's too shameful for the systems to accept. And when it's blatant in front of their face, they even have a harder time accepting it. I was looking through Angela Pye's streams this week, and a story that you shared, Angela, about your son and how he kept this offense that this teacher had a secret. And so, you know, you have these systems that hire these people 2, 3, 4 generations down that are coming to teach our children, and our children are not wanting to share some of that pain, you know, with their mothers, with their families, which is what happened in Angela's case.
Yeah, and if I could, just before Angela answers, if I could just give you one more piece of that systems analysis.
Yes.
Is that systems are oppressive.
Yes.
And so people will say, well, individuals make up the system. But my work and my approach is not about pointing fingers and laying blame on individuals. It's not about excusing individuals.
Yes, Joy.
But it's about going deep into the culture of the design of these systems and understanding that there has been no accountability for the kind of change that needs to occur so that systems don't continue to operate in that polluted way, right?
Yes.
But instead that they work to benefit all. And that oppression is people conform because systems send such a strong message about their resistance to change that people get those messages and they either will push against the walls of the institution to stretch it, but in many instances we won't because we're afraid we're going to lose our jobs. We're afraid we're going to be labeled as troublemakers. We're afraid we're going to be ostracized. And sometimes we are even promoted to make it more difficult. The stakes get higher the higher we go up in the organization. Yes. Oftentimes it's to silence us, right? And yes, so we often conform. And, you know, Angela's story is very, very powerful in terms of that being an example of how we know what the system expects of us and the pressure that it puts on people to have to conform to things that they know are just not right.
And let's look at why we're here. We're talking about trauma. We're talking about trauma that we experience.
Yes.
And
come on,
you refer to me as, you know, an activist. And I wouldn't have looked at me that way probably a month ago, a couple months ago, because I think the systems did have me stay silent in some aspect when you listen to what Joyce said, where any time that I spoke up, I was labeled as the angry Black woman. Or if I spoke up about an issue that I saw with one of my children, it was like, oh, here she goes. Now she's going to bring up race, where there was always some other excuse. You even look at an incident that happened with my nephew this past week, you know, where I thought we were over if we sat at an anthem or we knelt, we were over that you're disrespecting the flag, because systems and people are trying to tell us how we should protest, what we should do, when we should do it, as long as we don't make them uncomfortable. And I believe for a long time, many systems, the way that they're created, because again, as Joyce said, they're designed by people that don't look like you and me. They're designed for people that don't look like you and me. Mm-hmm. And so those systems tend to hold us down because of our fear of getting fired, or our fear of, for my son, maybe him getting in trouble at school or him not getting in National Honor Society, which are things that happen anyhow, but we try to minimize those negative things happening to us and we stay silent. I've learned I can't continue to stay silent. Things are going to happen whether I stay silent or not. So I'm going to use my voice and I'm going to advocate for myself, for my children, for my husband, for my family, and for my friends, and for all Black and brown children to not grow up in the same way as me with that mindset that you don't want to say too much because if you do, you might offend this person over here or you might offend that person over here. I have a lot of friends that work in law enforcement. I work in law enforcement every day. And it's funny to me because the ones that do their job and they do their job effectively, they don't have an issue with anything that I'm saying right now. It's the ones that maybe question, are they working ethically? Are they a part of the problem that tend to have a problem with what I'm saying? When I look at my white friends, there are many of them that are speaking up now, or they're trying to have a voice in what's going on and they're not getting offended. But then there's another group that are like, oh, wait a second, it's all lives matter, Angela. How dare you say it's Black Lives Matter? You're being more racist than me. And when you say that, I can't be racist. I don't have the power to hold you down. And so it's understanding and recognizing that when we look at systems.
Kimberly, do you have anything?
No. As you can see, I'm over here muted because I'm clapping. It's like I'm in church on the second pew over here. Thank you so much for asking. I'm just enjoying the conversation. Thank
Yes,
you so
yes,
much.
yes. And I think this is really good, this question and answer session. And I just want the viewers to know that last week was such an impactful table talk conversation that once you hear a lot of these answers and you go back to listen to last week, it'll make a lot more sense to you. And so we really wanted to take the time, this third table talk that we're having and conversation, to answer those questions. And so all of the questions that we are answering are really diving into what's going on when we talk about when he can't breathe, I can't either. Because the things that are happening in our culture, in our community, to African-American men and boys, all of the conversations that we're tabling are affecting us as women. And so we hope that last week when Joyce dived in to the groundwater theory and all of the components that she broke down, and the week prior, and this last week wrapping it all up in a question and answer session, will give you some really powerful tools to kind of departmentalize things that may be going on with you emotionally.
I do want to say that because of the conversation we had last week, which was my first introduction into the groundwater analysis, when I went back into my work, your eyes are open. It's like your blinders are off. You can't do things the same, and you see things differently, right? And so, if I could just encourage those that are watching to go back, if you didn't see last week or the first show, to go back and watch. And if you have to stop, I had to stop and push pause, write notes, and allow myself to cry and experience some of these things. And just some of it's kind of heartbreaking because you realize there are some situations you may have sat through quietly and you didn't even know what was going on. And now it's like I realize in hindsight, I was being traumatized and I didn't even know it. I was sitting there smiling through this stuff because I was on my job and getting paid. So I just think we need to have our eyes wide open. And I can tell you the next time and in weeks to come, I'll be doing things differently. And if I'm being quiet, I'll at least be educated quiet this time, right? Yes, and so I'm very grateful for these last 3 weeks. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Angela.
To add on to what Kimberly just said, I think one of the areas I've noted a change in me is when people ask me, how am I? Usually I'm like, I'm well, I'm fine, I'm great. That's not true. I'm not doing great right now. I'm not okay. I am traumatized. And I think sometimes as Black women, we have taken the burden of everything that's going on in society with our families, but yet we still walk into work with our head high and we still handle everything there and we still smile when most of the time we're probably getting paid significantly less than our counterparts, when we're being treated significantly different than the people that we work with every day. And so you look at the trauma that's put on us in that manner, and then you turn on social media or you turn on the news and you see what's happening to our men and our children and our women, and you carry that burden with you. It's tough and it's a struggle every day. And we can't just keep saying that we're fine. You know, you have to promote self-care. You have to do things for yourself. You have to talk about it. As much as being vulnerable has been difficult for me over the past few weeks, I felt better because I realized that in my community, I felt a lot of people saw the sporting activities that my children do, and they saw the cute little family photos and thought, oh, they must just have the perfect little family, and not think that we don't, experience racism. We experience things daily. We just have this focus where we're resilient and we deal with it. But at the same time, what does that do to us, that impact on us emotionally, mentally, physically? And so it's being able to have those conversations.
And I thought, and this is crazy, I thought just because I adopted a white child, that we were good, right? Our stuff looks real good. And I've never really been angry or even touched the conversation of racism, but I have been mad as hell. That's not like me. I'm Lady Joy. I don't get mad. And when people ask me how I'm doing great. I'm always wonderful, but I haven't been wonderful. I've actually been a mess. And I told Miss Phyllis that I feel like I need therapy. And this is what she said to me today. We are doing therapy right now.
Yes,
That's the thing. And so, Miss Angela, you're telling the truth. We're talking about how the psychological impacts. Yes, Black women, we need to be vulnerable. And we need to stop saying we're okay because we're not okay. And we need to stop talking about each other as women. And we need to start circling up. And we need to start getting real about how we feel. We're not okay. And then the other thing I want to say, I want to give a shout out to my husband and to all the Black men who are circling up around their women. I have been an absolute mess, but my husband, I guess he's listening. He's using my own words. I said, don't be using my stuff on me. But he has been absolutely wonderful. And so it's like when she can't breathe, I can't breathe. So the thing is, my family unit is coming together. And I'm so grateful for that. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we're pulling back in again. And so I always try to see the beauty and the sunshine in this. And that is, we're just going to be loving a little bit tighter in here. And so again, a shout out to the Black men and all the men who are loving on their women who are actually starting to feel really, So anyway, I probably didn't say that right, but I'm just so grateful.
It was beautiful. You said amazing. I want to add on something to that, to thank you to our men. But I also want to, as Black women, say this, like, we have to support each other and love each other and build each other up. And I think that that's important, especially when we're going through times like this, is to make sure that we're doing that of one another. We're talking about race-related trauma, but I think about some of the trauma that I've experienced, and especially at the hands of racism. I want other Black women to support me. I have my husband to build me up, and I'm glad that I have him, and I'm glad that I have my close friends, but I want us to build each other up. We shouldn't be in competition with each other. There's enough room at the top for all of us. And so it's understanding that, and it's recognizing that in this time as well, and not, some of the trauma that I experienced that I think about as a child is I didn't just hear the microaggressions from white people, but that I talked white. Just those things that we don't do when we don't support each other. Like right now, when you're hearing us talk about these issues, support each other and love each other. I cannot stress that enough, because There's
Yeah,
so many people in society that don't have our back. The least we can do is support and love one another. And so I just tell you, when Kimberly, you talk about this being therapy, I am so blessed to be surrounded by you amazing women that I can talk to and that do lift me up. So thank you.
I just wanted to just kind of add on to this discussion about supporting one another and, really looking at it as something that also stems from the internalization of racism.
Yes.
Yes.
We have been taught to not trust, not believe, not care for, and I'm not trying to make excuses for us as individuals.
Oh, you're right.
But when you think about the hundreds of years that, even starting back to when Black people were considered not to be fully human, that every message we received was that we were worthless and inferior. When you think about our stories of somebody standing on an auction block and someone bidding on, how much it's going to cost to buy a human being, that the repeated trauma of those things become so internalized that we begin to believe that that's who we are.
Yes.
And so we have to do work around racism too, right? In order for us to be healthy and whole, we have to understand what racism has done to us. It has robbed us of the love, that our ancestors had for one another, right? One of the, some of the manifestations of internalized racial inferiority, we were talking earlier, right before the show about people moving out of their neighborhoods. One of the manifestations is distancing ourselves from people who look like us. That when they let us into the corporate office, that we don't want other people who look like us to be in the corporate office, because we already know how the corporate structure feels about people who look like us. And they have somehow made us believe that we are different than our brothers and sisters, so that we can't be concerned and care about them. And that we too have been socialized to point outward and say that they're at fault for their circumstances. That if they would do what we did, because our parents raised us to know that education was the key, and if you work hard, you could be anything you wanted to be. Well, we need to understand that that's a lie, because there are a lot of people who work their butts off and still can't break through those institutional walls, right? And so the support that we need has to come from our understanding of what racism has done to us. And then we can work together to hold systems accountable.
Right.
For creating a culture that supports equitable outcomes for us.
Yeah, that's what makes my blood boil, especially when we talk about educated people. When you consider what the Black community, what Black people have been through not very long ago, and it's still happening. That's why we're here today, because it is still happening. I find it wonderful that we've gotten as far as we have. When I get people who obviously get it, they can hear, they can understand and comprehend that when you keep a people down, the result that's there makes complete sense to me when we talk about statistics and everything. Because Black people are as capable as anyone else of doing anything, of being anything. But to look at society as it is and say, oh, you didn't do this, or you didn't pull yourself up by your bootstraps when there was slavery, when there was Jim Crow, when, this is a trivial example of what I mean, but 20 years ago in Austin, I wrote an article for the Austin American-Statesman. A photographer and I went to 4 different salons, 4 different beauty salons in Austin. I walked in, I'm a very dark-skinned Black woman, and I asked for makeup, foundation that matches my skin tone. 3 of the 4 didn't even come close. They just did not have makeup for my skin tone. I don't wear makeup, but this was, the point was for the article. And what that showed 20 years ago in Austin was, as a Black woman living in this city where I pay taxes, my quality of life is less than a white woman simply because I'm Black. Now that was with makeup. That was a small example, a sort of trivial example for much larger things. Why does the world not cater to me if we are equal? Go ahead. It upsets me because
makeup, but makeup is not really trivial, because if women are concerned about the way they look on the outside, then it's really everything. And I'm sorry for interrupting.
But that's the whole thing. It was again an example of, we're talking makeup, but that could apply to education. That could apply to health. It applies to so many larger issues that get to the quality of life of a human being. And what those 3 salons told me was, you're not worth it. Again, I get the economics of it all. If it's a small group of people, why cater to them if they're not going to bring that money in? But again, that's a trivial example to describe in part what it can be like to live in this Black skin.
Right, and added to that, right? And so when you add all of that to the murders of Black men.
Right. And women.
You add all of those everyday other things that you have, then it's no wonder Black women are more likely to die during childbirth or shortly afterwards. It's no wonder Black babies are more likely to die during their first year of birth, even when their moms are highly educated, do all the right things. It is the Blackness that is causing systems and institutions to kill us.
Wow. Wow, that's so good.
I think Angela was saying something.
I was. When you talk about that, Joyce, I'd like to hear your thoughts. I listened to Chief Manley last night at a community conversation, and another detective, and I think about the hiring practices for Austin PD, and just even probably all over the country, when they talk about why they don't have a lot of minority applicants that make it through. One of those factors is their credit. The impact of that as a system, running somebody's credit report and looking at race. I don't know the specific numbers, but that's another factor. And you look at the amount of families that do or don't have those conversations with your children. I'd be interested to know your opinion and thoughts about that, Joyce, too, when we're talking about systems.
Yeah, and just to say, that's a whole big piece of a workshop, and it's one of the most powerful lessons that I learned from the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond in the Undoing Racism workshop, is that it's not just about the fact that if you're poor, you're more likely to have poor credit. But what we need to have that deeper analysis and understanding of is, why are people poor? And what is it about their relationship with systems and institutions that when we institute credit reports, we already know who's going to have bad credit, right? It might not be something we consciously, think about when we're doing it, but there's a whole history as to why Black people and other non-white people have a disproportionately poor and live in poor communities. If it takes a good education to get a good job and the education system is failing us, then we're not going to get a good job. And so if we can't get a loan at a low interest rate, but we can be exploited with payday loans, then we're going to take it if we need to feed our families, right?
Yes.
And if just because of where you live determines how much your homeowner's insurance is and how much your car insurance is, just by the mere fact that you live in a poor, under-resourced community, then there needs to be a deeper analysis and understanding about why we're not hiring people because they have poor credit. It's not about them being lazy and not caring about paying their bills, right? It's about something much deeper than that. And that's what we have to understand for systems to transform their culture and create some space for some new thinking and some new knowledge and awareness and understanding of institutional and structural racism so that they can change those things. So, you know, if you want diversity, you have to look deep into the practice of an institution. Yeah. And you have to go to the root cause of the problem versus blaming the individual or always looking at the symptom of a much deeper problem. So yeah, it's like, you know, so why are people poor? There's a whole history to why people are poor, right?
Yes, there is.
You know, who could be educated legally? Right?
Right.
Who you had to be white to even own land. Right?
Yep.
Who could get a loan to build a house in the suburbs that could accumulate enough wealth for you to send your kids to college without having to have student loans, right? Mm-hmm. Who could benefit from Social Security, right? When the only way that they could get the Social Security Act passed was to eliminate certain people who were farm laborers and you know, domestic people. And who were those people, right? So we have been socialized to believe that people are poor because they are just lazy and don't want to work. But if we dig deeper, we find some real deep systemic reasons as to why I'm poor and why my credit is bad and how that impacts my ability to get a job.
Mm-hmm. And Joyce, if I can say, for the people who are not ready to accept it and don't want to dig deep, just do a Google search. And we mentioned on one of the last shows, we mentioned that because of home ownership, that it would take Black people 200 years to amass the kind of wealth that white families have, because it's rooted in that land and that home. That makes total sense to me. So why do many people fight that and say that's not real? That is a fact. It was a system. It was law. And so it makes complete sense to me why we're poor, why communities are poor. We were meant to be. That's what they wanted us to be.
And when you talk about Google search, if you look up USA Today in 2018, reported that the median wealth for white families was $135,000 and the median wealth for Black families was $11,000.
That's just because we don't want to succeed and have money.
I know, right?
Buying cars.
We just don't want it, right? Yeah.
Well, our Blackness precedes everything else about us. Mm-hmm. And because of how people in this country have been socialized to think about people based solely on the color of their skin, until we began to dig deeper into how we've been socialized, those old attitudes and assumptions and stereotypes that we hold to be true about people, race will continue to be the #1 predictor of our outcomes.
And why do people act like they don't see color, but they know they do? Like, you know you see me, you know you see my Blackness, but we're not supposed to talk about race, but you do see me. And because if you were to describe me, you probably would describe me as the Black woman.
Yes, they would.
I mean, it would be the first descriptor. Or my weight. She got big hips. I'm just saying. I mean, think about it.
That's the way they describe us.
So Kimberly, that's the way they describe us. I got into a disagreement with somebody yesterday because one of my children, somebody made a complaint about his playing time in a game, but we had 2 other kids on our team that had played more than my kid. And so I was like, I was trying to not say it was about race, but it was. And the person that I was talking to was like, Angela, when I see your son, I see a fast kid that's nifty and can move fast and has some bright cleats. I don't see his color. And I was like, are you serious? And he told me, I don't see his color, and I'm offended that you tell me that I do. Well, then why didn't you notice the other 2 kids on our team that played more time? You saw him because he was the minority in the group that you're looking at, and you noticed him, but he doesn't see color. So
it's hard for them to accept what's happening. It's hard for them to really say what they're feeling, and they don't want to really acknowledge that they're recipients of this system that's been built and that they're privileged to it. And it's a hard thing to kind of, swallow for a lot of people.
And I mean,
if I could just say too about systems and how we've been socialized, one of the biggest faults for this country is that we've all been lied to about history. All of us have been lied to about history. And
that is so powerful, Joyce James. Well, I mean, it really dives deep and gets to the root of everything we've been discussing, the whole 3 series and everything that's going on in our country today.
Absolutely. And so we internalize those things that we are taught, those messages that we receive from the media and the different systems and institutions that we interact with, and we've all been lied to. And if you dig into history and you find the truth about history, again, I'll mention the Undoing Racism workshop, because one of the most powerful experiences that people have cross-racially in that workshop is learning the truth about history, right?
I cried for 2 weeks after I did the work.
Right. So I'm not making excuses for white people, but they've been told, I think I said last week, they've been told that they came to this country. Well, we were poor too. That's what they'll say. We came to this country with nothing but the shirts on our backs. We worked hard and no one ever gave us anything. That's what white people have been taught. White people need to understand and get to the truth that yes, your family came here. Yes, they worked hard, but systems and institutions gave you everything to the exclusion of everybody else. They gave it to you.
Gave it to you.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, actually, it looks like it is 6:57, and as the host, I am going to keep us true to time. So, Ms.
Well, I think we're going to go over a little bit because Joyce is going to read something.
We are going to go over a little bit. So I wanted to ask if you had one more question before I allowed each of them to give their last words and benediction. Did you have any more questions for them?
No, I'm looking at my phone to see if anything came over, and no, it looks good. We're good.
Okay, I wanted to thank Brenda Green. My nose is running from crying. That happens my colleagues often. I wanted to thank Brenda Green. She has been very active throughout all of the shows. Thank you so much. Linda Wright has also been watching for quite some time, and she says we have been lied to and we continue to lie to ourselves. I just want to let you know she's one of our white allies who is watching.
Thank you, Linda, my dear friend Linda.
So she is watching. Thank you so much. She also, Brenda Green said that this was a very brave and courageous conversation.
It has been.
So again, Ms. Phyllis Everett, we thank you for creating this platform for us to be able to come together and to have this conversation. What I would like to do now, and we will go a little bit over time, but this is very important. I wanted to turn the floor over to each of our dynamic guests and allow you an opportunity to just kind of talk about, just kind of like if we were in church, to give your last words and benediction, you know, what this all means to you, maybe your gratitude, your takeaway, anything you'd like to share with our audience at this time. What I'd like to do is I'd like to actually start with Charlotte is actually on mute, but I wanted to start with you if I could. Also, Charlotte is the CNN international writer. She is also the executive director of the Black Bodies Project and the author of Benevolence in Black, this beautiful book right here. And if you would like to get in touch with Charlotte or to order her book, you can get information at the blackbodiesproject.com. Charlotte Moore, thank you for being here, and I would like to turn it over to you at this time. We are so grateful to you.
Well, thank you very much. If I'm in church, I got to say, giving honor to God, giving honor to all of the dignitaries. I haven't been to church in a while, but that's okay. Thank you for that, Kimberly. And the book is going to be on Amazon too, an ebook. So I'll put all that information on my website. And for me, like I've said over and over, I learned so much. Kimberly, you put it perfectly when you said you see things differently. So when I've been to Joyce's workshops, and then the more research that I've done on my own, it's like, it really is like the blinders are off. And it's not, there's no judgment. It just is what it is. Like, you go through your whole life and you realize there was so much you didn't recognize. The nature of racism is diabolical. And it makes so much sense to me now how these systems have been propped up to work for a select group of people. And you don't have to look that hard to prove it. It's right there. So with the Black Bodies Project, I believe that there is power in storytelling and power in empathy. I actually do believe in humanity. I want to believe that we have the power to, as Joyce said, transform not only these systems, but I do focus on individual stories. We have that power I can transform how I think. You know, for the first 20, 30 years of my life, I didn't do yoga. And then when I hit 40, I started doing yoga. And I started traveling the world, going on yoga retreats, and it changed me. We can do that here. We can change the way we believe. We can, you know, look what happened with Mr. Floyd, you know, and then across the world. We felt the shift. We felt it. We're still feeling it. So I believe in this work, and I'm grateful to you all. And everybody needs to go to one of Joyce's workshops, is what I have to say. So
you just gave her an amazing plug. I love that. Yes. I would like to ask you one last question. Do you have any amazing new projects coming up for yourself?
You know what? It's time. And the film and the book, that was God. It was God working through me. And it's not to say that those two things are anything more than what they are, but whatever they are, that was the Spirit working through me. And I've asked the Spirit to help me come up with the next thing. And so we'll see. I'll let you know first.
All right. Thank you so much for such a time as this. All right. And next, Angela Pye. I thank you so much for being here. I thank you for sharing your stories. I thank you for opening up your family really to the world. Angela Pye is the author of A Black Mother Dying. If you would like to order this book and to get information from Angela Pye, you may get in touch with her at ablackmotherdying.com. It's that simple. Again, Angela Pye, thank you for being here. I am sitting on the second pew of the church. Let the church say amen. Amen. Angela, go ahead and give us your last words and benediction.
So first, I want to thank God just for allowing us all to be able to have this space over the last 3 weeks. It has truly been a blessing to have these conversations with each and every one of you women. For me, what I want the viewers to hear is that racism exists. There are so many people on my timeline that I hear that just want their timelines in social media and they want their life to go back to normal. And I asked you what that normal is, because for me, I don't have the privilege to not talk about racism. I live it every single day. And as a mother and as a wife, I no longer, I don't think I ever really had the privilege to stay silent, even when I did. I think staying silent maybe allowed me to think that I was more secure in the workplace or more secure in the community I lived in, but it wasn't what needed to be my reality. And so, for those of you that have been silent, like me, because of your fear of people saying that you're always talking about race, or your fear of possibly losing friendships. I see people deleting each other every day on social media. I don't delete anybody. I don't know if they delete me, but I don't delete anybody because my messages are for those that don't understand. I want you to know the experiences that my children go through and that I've gone through. Yes, I had to have the conversation with my husband and my boys about, hey, I want to share some of this. I haven't shared everything. I've shared what they felt comfortable with in sharing. And I don't want people to mistake it. I have people text me and send me messages saying, oh my gosh, this is so awful that you and your children have to go through this. I can't imagine. It's not just me. There are people all around the world having the very same experiences that my children are having every day. I'm just deciding to be vocal and share because there's too many people that don't believe that racism exists. And I need you to know and to understand that it does. And the reality is, I can speak about it every day. But until white people go into spaces that I may not be allowed to go in, or I may not be a conversation in and actually speak up as well, it's going to continue to be a problem until people like me work in the systems and make the policies that impact myself and my children. I look at our school board. You mentioned the school board earlier. I am at every school board meeting now speaking. I'm not a part of the school board. I've had several people reach out to me to request for me to run for school board, but those are commitments. And we're saying that if you want to speak up, you need to be involved. But I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I have to work 80 hours a week to help take care of my family. And so then you also look at the system of how that's set up to even be involved for somebody like me to be there for my children and family is difficult as well. I just encourage, I can't tell you the hundreds of messages that I've received in Facebook or via my phone of people that have very similar stories, but they don't want to share them because they're fearful. That fear that you carry with you is the trauma that we deal with every day. Race-related trauma is real. There's been several nights this week I haven't gotten any sleep because of things that either family members have gone through or my children have gone through. But yet I get up and go to work and I do a webinar just like I got sleep. So I just want to leave you understanding racism exists. We have to talk about it. It's okay to use the word Black. Don't be fearful of saying Black, and just understanding, have these conversations, not just on Facebook Live, have the conversations with the people in your community, have the conversations at your churches, have the conversations with people that you may not have talked to every day, and then educate yourself. Don't just watch one news station. Watch CNN and watch Fox so that you can hear the different perspectives and make a choice for yourself. Educate yourself and have those conversations so that we can continue to grow and so that we can focus on equity in this country and in our systems.
Girl, that's good. You know how you in church and you try to take notes in your Bible and you out of space? Okay, get balance. CNN, watch CNN and watch Fox and Friends. Okay, I got
I didn't
notes.
say agree with it. I just said watch it so that you know what people are learning.
I know, because in my house we are stuck on CNN. And I told my husband, you might need to move over there and get your little Fox and Friends so you can get some happy balance. Okay,
You
thank you
need
for
to
that.
diversify so that you understand what people are saying to you and you hear what they're hearing. So you can be like, wait a second.
That's good. And then on a real note, I echo and resonate with you. This has been a sleepless week for me as well. And I want to give gratitude and appreciation to you and all of us who continue to show up, and to those of us who continue to speak out and to share our truth. Thank you, Angela Pye. Again, if you would like to connect with Angela Pye, you may do so at ablackmotherdying.com, and I encourage you to order this book. Now, you know, I love church. And so I'm going to leave the last words for the mother of the church. Woo woo. Yes, the mother of the church. She has brought to us for the last 3 weeks wisdom, so much wisdom. Again, I am so honored to have sat with her, Miss Joyce James. She has given us conversation about undoing racism. I've heard about it in the community. I've never wanted to touch it. She made me get all into it. We got wet in the water. We had a conversation about the groundwater analysis. This has been really great. If you would like more information, she says her phone lines have been blowing up. I asked a question. Who is this conversation for? The answer is easy. It is rated E for everyone. Everyone needs to have this conversation. If you would like more information, you would like to get in touch with Miss Joyce James, it's easy. You may do so at joycejamesconsulting.com. Guys, as a brand ambassador, these ladies have figured out how to do the marketing. Just make it easy. Just these .coms are real easy. joycejamesconsulting.com. Okay? And this is one of the notes I wrote for her. This is one of the questions she asked last week for our white friends. Do you want to wake up black? I'm going to turn it over to Joyce James. You have the last words. I love you.
I love all you ladies, and I want to say thank God and thank to each of you for sharing this platform the last 3 weeks, and for all of the people who have joined us. You know, this is really, it's personal for me too. So it's about my husband, it's about my children, it's about my grandchildren. Believe it or not, I have great grandchildren. It's about my brothers and my sisters, and it's about people all over the world, really. And so I would like, if you all would just kind of bear with us, I need about 3 minutes. I'm going to read a poem, and it's The Negro Mother. And I was so intrigued by this poem by Langston Hughes because it goes back hundreds of years, but it's still so true today. So this is how I would like to end my time here. And it's, children, I come back today to tell you a story of the long, dark way that I had to climb, that I had to know in order that the race might live and grow. Look at my face, dark as night, yet shining like the sun with love's true light. I am the dark girl who crossed the Red Sea, carrying in my body the seed of the free. I am the woman who worked in the field, bringing the cotton and the corn to yield. I'm the one who labored as a slave, beaten and mistreated for the work that I gave. Children sold away from me, my husband sold too. No safety, no love, no respect was I due. 300 years in the deepest South, but God put a song and a prayer in my mouth. God put a dream like steel in my soul. Now, through my children, I'm trying to reach the goal. Now, through my children, young and free, I realized the blessing deed to me. I couldn't read then. I couldn't write. I had nothing back there in the night. Sometimes the valley was filled with tears, but I kept trudging on through the lonely years. Sometimes the road was hot with the sun, but I had to keep on till all my work was done. I had to keep on, no stopping for me. I was the seed of the coming free. I nourished that dream that nothing could smother deep in my breast, the Negro mother. I had only hope then, but now through you, dark ones of today, my dreams must come true. All you dark children in the world out there, remember my sweat, my pain, my despair. Remember my years heavy with sorrow, and make of those years a torch for tomorrow. Make of my past a road to the light, out of the darkness, the ignorance, the night. Lift high my banner out of the dust. Stand like free men supporting my trust. Believe in the right. Let none push you back. Remember the whip and the slaver's track. Remember how the strong in struggle and strife still bar you the way and deny you life, but march ever forward, breaking down bars. Look ever upward at the sun and the stars. Oh, my dark children, may my dreams and my prayers impel you forever up the great stairs. For I will be with you till no white brother dares keep down the children of the Negro mother.
Wow, that is amazing. Words of wisdom from the mother of the church. We absolutely love you, Joyce James. We think actually at a loss of words. I wrote down on my notes. I'm supposed to tell you all that these amazing shirts we have, When He Can't Breathe, I Can't Breathe Either, is a movement, and they are available for purchase. You may do so at ican'teither.com. Is that correct, Miss Phyllis?
Yes, that is ican'teither.com.
ican'teither.com. These are available for men and women and children. You can get one.
I think we had about 2,000 shirts sold, so that was good. Mm-hmm.
How many?
About 2,000. More to come. Yeah.
That is so awesome. Miss Phyllis, is there anything you want to say as we get out of here?
Yes, of course. I just want to say thank you for all the streamers who have joined us for the last 3 weeks for the series that we've hosted. And I hope, and as you know, Saffron Trust Womens Foundation is an organization that partners with other organizations and is also advocating for women and also getting to know things that are going on in the community. This 3-part series with you women, you ladies, have given me such good information and has allowed me to have tools to talk to the women that I support. So this has been an education for Saffron Trust Womens Foundation. I've been hosting and asking questions, but it has been truly an educational seminar for me. So thank you for sharing your experiences and all of the wealth of information you have. It's been such a blessing. I just want to also mention the movement that has started When He Can't Breathe, that I Can't Breathe Either, which is focusing on the stressors that we have as African-American women. And we've talked about that through the 3 shows and ending on today. Joyce and Angela and Kimberly and Charlotte did an excellent job. So I just want to say thank you. And I also just want to read, going out on the mission of what's When He Can't Breathe, I Can't Either, is a movement that was founded in 2020 as a direct response to the countless murders of unarmed African-American men at the hands of law enforcement. What we're hoping through advocacy, mentorship, and support, our goal is to give a voice to the mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives of the African-American man who died prematurely. And we hope that we have accomplished that through this 3-week series that we have had and through this Courageous Conversation platform. And I would just like to say thank you for joining us. And please order your t-shirts. When he can't breathe, I can't either.
And since I'm gonna close with this.
Yes.
Um, since we're talking about the psychological impacts that this has on us, I want to remind us again to stop hating on each other as women and come together and circle up and love on each other. And when you ask how your sister is doing, really spend some time and listen to her. You may not be able to have all the answers, and I promise you, you probably won't. But really, what we need to do is just be a container and just listen and hold space for her and love her. And again, I say thank you to all of our strong men who have been holding it down for us during this time. I want to let you know that we love you, we honor you, and we support you. When you can't breathe, we can't either. I am Lady Joy, and it has been my absolute pleasure to be here to love you and to serve each of you. Have a wonderful Saturday evening, and I pray that each of us actually get some sleep and that we lay it down tonight. Amen.
Amen.
Say amen.
Amen.